Mike, turn your games down.
Hi, episode 261 of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who's in a God of War game, not God of War, with me tonight?
Dog! This is Julian Titus, making fun of Ron Perlman's terrible voice acting in this game.
I didn't mind it, but I also didn't play with sound all the time, so...
Yeah, I sure did. And if you play with the sound on all the time, you laugh every time you hear, dog!
Yeah, I didn't hear that much, so I must have sound off more than I thought I did. I got tired of it. I didn't need sound.
That was a funny one, and then when you rescue some of the women, like one of them will say, like, "Take me and crush me with your love," and I need a partner who says that to me sometime, because that was fun.
I liked it when they go, "Where did my clothes go?" That would make me laugh. I had sound on sometime, but it got near the end of the game, I just muted it. It's like, I'm good. I don't want to hear anything anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm tired of you. And a lot of deaths, so I didn't need to hear the death sound over and over again, so that was part of it. But we are here to talk about Conan, developed by Nihilistic Software, published by THQ, came out in 2007 for PS3 and 360, which I feel like a lot of people probably didn't even know this game existed. So...
Yeah, I feel like it got a decent amount of buzz at the time, but of course, it's been quite a while since then, and there's also been like two other Conan games that were much bigger projects that came out after this one. One of them, I think, was even in the same year. I think that Conan MMO came out either the same year or the year after, to the point that, like, when I saw Akana, like the female lead, I was like, oh, I think I remember her in the Playboy spread, because this was around that time when Playboy was doing like the Women of Video Games issues every year. And I had to look it up, and it's like, no, it was actually a woman from like the Age of Conan MMO
2008.
game. Yeah.
Age of Conan is 2008. Then we get Conan Exiles, which is an open world survival game in 2018, Xbox One.
Yeah, and I think that one is still going. I don't think Age of Conan is, though, but I could be wrong. It's funny how MMOs just kind of continue and kind of, you're like, oh, that's got to be dead, right? It's like, oh no, it's got like 3,000 players still.
It went to free to play a model back in 2011.
Okay,
but I don't know if it still exists. But no, you never know. I mean, you are right. MMOs just live forever sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Just people. I mean, if they get enough people and they get a couple whales, they'll just keep going.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think Star Trek Online is still going. Like, the Lord of the Rings Online is still going. Those are all like right around the same time frame.
Age of Conan is still going.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, there you go.
As at least of February 2023, there are people still playing it and talking about it and writing about it. So
yeah,
it's not dead. So first, I have to ask, like, do you have any history with Conan the character?
I do not. I haven't read any of the books, although I've really wanted to. I think I might have read one or two comics, but I always preferred Red Sonja for obvious reasons. I can't say no to a chainmail bikini. I also think she's just a really cool character. Like, I was really waiting for that Robert Rodriguez directed Red Sonja movie starring Rose McGowan that never happened. I haven't seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I did watch the Jason Momoa movie when it came out, and I actually watched about half of it before the podcast. I didn't get a chance to finish it. But I was like, oh, you know what? Like, let me refresh myself on, like, some of the lore, right? Because, again, I don't really have, like, a big frame of reference.
Yeah.
I did play this game not long after it came out, and I was trying to figure out why I hadn't played it on the 360, because that was my main console at the time. And I think I must have found it on PS3 for like $20 in a bargain bin or something like that, and that's where I ended up playing it.
Okay. I bought this game twice, of course, because that's what I like to do. I bought it on Xbox 360. My guess had to have been for like under $10.
Mm-hmm.
In some like GameStop dirt cheap sale, just because. But I never got around to it because my roommate didn't like games with nudity. So I'm like, and I lived in a basement, and the TV was in the living room where she lived pretty much. And I'm like, well, I'll just get to this someday. Oh, I paid $15 used, what the 360 copy tells me. Probably buy two, get one free. So I never got around to it. I'm like, I got other games to play. I'll someday get around to playing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot about it. And then at some point, I bought it on PS3 when I was recollecting a lot of my games, because all my 360 ones are in bins and storage. So I rebought stuff cheap, and I paid $4 for it on PS3 and still never got around to it. And I think it was sometime this year. It might have been when me and you talked earlier, and then you were like, yeah, I'll play that. And I'm like, well, now I got an excuse and someone to play it. So it went on, and so here we are.
Yeah. And yeah, that's one of the, I'm sure I've said it before, but that's one of the things that I like about this show is, revisiting games, especially because I love B games, right? And
Same.
This is like a perfect 7 out of 10 game. It is not gonna blow your socks off or anything like that, but it's got interesting ideas and there's parts where it's like, holy shit, that was cool. Like that was a neat like sequence or whatever. And then, in true B game fashion, like there's parts where it's like, oh, that is underbaked, right? and I actually looked a little bit into the making of this game, and apparently it was originally supposed to come out in 2008, but they were forced to release it in 2007, like almost a full year ahead, because the company had been having like financial issues or something like that, and so they wanted to, I don't know, kind of try to recoup cost or whatever like that. And it kind of shows, like, I don't think that another year would have fixed like all of the game's issues, but you gotta think that it probably would have like gone a long way to like really polishing it and, maybe getting some ideas in there that they just had to cut for time constraints.
And that can ruin things, especially a year sooner than you're expecting. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah. When you think, I always hear these stories about how much games come together in like the last like 3 months, right? Like that's kind of the do or die. Like, okay, now, we've got everything in place. Now it's time to iterate and polish and blah, blah, blah. And like, even games that are like widely critically acclaimed and players love them and stuff like that, reportedly look like train wrecks, just like 3 or 4 months before they, actually get into our hand.
Metroid Prime is a prime example of that. Where that game was just trash until it just worked.
Yeah.
I mean, because Silicon Knights is not known to... they had some bad time.
Well, that was...
Wait, Metroid Prime Silicon Knight? No, Retro. Sorry, Retro.
Retro, yeah. But yeah, the leader of Retro apparently was really dropped the ball on that for a really long time.
Uh-huh. There's a whole thing I watched once on Matt and Muscle's What Happened that talked about it. That was really good. And I always think about that. Like, yeah, I mean, that game never should have been as good as it is.
Yeah.
But it just lucked out me and Nintendo. I mean, I didn't have any problems with Conan as I played through it, but I can definitely, like, it could have used some more polish. There were a couple times where I got stuck in things and, like, had to, like, jump to get out of it, or just, like, he just wouldn't move, and I would have to keep positioning until finally he would just get out of being stuck. Like, that happened a couple times.
Yeah. I'll get into, like, my issues later, because it really, like, I felt that, like, it started very strong, and then there's, like, some bits in the middle that are, like, actually, like, really cool and impressive. And then, like, the last 3 levels, I think, is, like, this is where you ran out of time. Like, because it starts to, like, towards the end of the game, for most of the game, I think it is a perfectly cromulent game, pun intended. But the last few levels, like, it starts to feel like Steam shovelware shit, where it's like, oh, nobody play tested this. Like, there is no, I cannot imagine a scenario where someone's like, this last boss fight is fine, this works.
No, that boss fight is trash.
Yes. And in a game that had some pretty fun, pretty cool multi-stage boss fights, I gotta say.
Yeah, I liked everything up to him. He was just too much, but I didn't really think about it. But yeah, you were definitely right where they just ran out of time and they were just like, well, it works, ship it. I mean, this is still the era when, they could update things and update games and fix it, but it's like the very beginning of that era.
Right.
I feel like with 2007. Like,
yeah,
this didn't have trophies.
What's
on
that?
PS3. There's no trophy support.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because, trophies didn't get put in until, like 2009, maybe 2010?
I think. I wasn't a PS3 gamer till later, and then it was really just the exclusives that I started with.
Yeah.
Like, you could see where the trophies would have been, because you'd get, like, a little thing, oh, you did this, and you get a little picture, which would have been an achievement, but there were no trophies, so nothing happened. I was just laughing at it. I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah, because... I'm sure that the 360 was the lead SKU, because of course it would have been at this time, right? And since that stuff was already integrated, I can see on the PS3, they're like, it's sort of like on when you play Switch games that are multi-ported, right? It's like, oh, here's this like in-game thing that they tell you that you did because Nintendo's always 10 years behind the times, but there you go. Yay, you did it. But yeah, and this is one of those games where, like, it's from an era that I remember, because I remember this time when people were starting to really complain about how short games were. And this game is only like, you beat it around 4-something hours. I was like about 5. And, I had seen on how long to beat, 6 to 11 if you want to get everything, right? And this is one of those games where like I could see myself going back and trying to mop up a lot of the achievements, other than the fact that like there's no way I'd want to play this on. I played this on easy just because I wanted to kind of blow through it for the show. But like
the right way.
That ended up being like the right call, because there's certain things, especially later on with the behavior of the enemy AI, where it's like, oh, this would be like controller throwingly frustrating by the end, because there's like an enemy that they introduced towards the end. It's a dual bladed dude that does this whirlwind attack, which is fine on its own. But when you're fighting three of them at the same time and they can just kind of do that at will, they can just stun lock you into oblivion.
Oh, you mean the giant statues?
No, just regular sized dudes. Like,
oh, you're talking about the little ghost guys, aren't you?
No. They were like in the sand desert or like sand level. They were like human dudes, but like they had two weapons.
I don't remember them very well, so they might not. I had a lot of problems with the ghost guys in the end.
I had some problems with them as well, but my bigger problem towards the end was that they decided to turn this game into a platformer, and also like just I died far more from falling than I did to dying from enemy attacks.
Right. I died once from enemy attacks. Most of my deaths, and the game didn't. I don't think the game kept track of them, or at least if it did, I didn't notice. Or all like dying from jumping, because this is not a platformer.
No. God of War would fall into this problem as well, and this game is very much inspired by God of War. It's funny to think of like how, because I was trying to look at the timeline, because God of War comes out 2005, this is 2007, and it's like, oh no, this is still in the era where you could crank out a game in 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Like it's hard, it's crazy to think about that, and I think the game looks okay. It's definitely of that 360 era where it's a very boring muted color palette that I think doesn't do it any justice, and it's also funny to put it up against God of War 2 or God of War 2, which came out the same year for the PlayStation 2, which blows this game out of the water.
I've never played that game to this day still.
Oh, that is my favorite God of War out of like the entire franchise by far.
Just never gotten around to it yet.
Oh man, yeah, like the sense of scale on that game, even by today's standards, is still like, if you can play it, and remember like what 2007 was like, it's like, damn, like they were doing this on a PlayStation 2 in 2007. That is crazy. And but you can definitely see the similarities here and the inspirations, but it doesn't have that same crunchiness to the combat that God of War does. Like from like moment one, like you press the attack button once on the original God of War on PlayStation 2, and you're like, oh, that felt good. I like the way that felt. And Conan never really gets quite there. Like it doesn't really have like a lot of feedback to stuff. And I actually would have liked it to be a little gorier, because I'm easily amused, Mike. Like,
I mean, that's what I think Conan is known for. Like, I've never read the comics. I've never read the books. I think I've seen the first Schwarzenegger movie, maybe the second one. I don't remember. I haven't seen them since I was a child. And then I know I saw the Jason Momoa one. But I feel like Conan is just known to being a very bloody type fiction.
Yeah, sometimes I want like something that challenges my mind and makes me think about things. Sometimes I want like a lot of action and gore and boobs, and that's what Conan is to me. And this definitely delivers on that. But I think I would have liked more gore and more boobs.
I agree with that. Like, sometimes I complain about it. Like, it isn't like, why are you having nudity in this game? But here it worked, and I'm assuming it has to do with just Conan in general. But again, I don't know enough about him. I just remember when this game came out, I think there was a cover story in Game Informer where they talked about like Conan doesn't normally use magic. He's very against magic in his world, or something like that. I mean, because there is magic in this game that you get, but I did, and which is all based on the equipment that you have to get, very Metroid style, where he loses everything at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, I did. I thought that was actually kind of neat. I liked getting the armor pieces throughout the course of the adventure.
I mean, I had no problem with the gameplay, but then again, I also have never played God of War 2, God of War 3. I haven't played Bayonetta. I haven't played so many games, like action games that are well known for being, stuff like this. This is usually a genre I just don't mess with it very much, or if I do, it's older. So I think that for me, I didn't feel anything wrong with it because I haven't played anything where I'm like, oh, okay, this feels just like what I'm used to.
Yeah, and I think
it's stuck in the past.
Well, and I think it's cool because like it starts off very simplistic, and it's like, oh, okay, this is just going to be like almost like a Dynasty Warriors style button masher, right? Just like XXX your way through, or square, whichever controller you're on. to victory. But as you start to unlock moves and stuff like that, and I really like the way that he has basically like 3 different fighting styles. You have, your one sword, you have a sword and shield, and you have, 4. And then you have, the two bladed, like the dual wielding, and then you have like a great weapon fighting style. And they all have different moves. And I was surprised at the depth to the combat where, as I started to play it and really like dig in there, I was like, okay, no, like I've got strategies with these different weapon sets and move sets. And I kind of ended up gravitating towards sword and shield because I thought it had more flexibility. The problem lies in the enemies themselves. My biggest issue is that they turtle up. They will just like block to the livelong day, and it almost turns it into like a turn-based combat system where it's like they go and while you block, and then you go while they block, and then hopefully at some point you break their block and get through. And especially by the end of the game, at least for me, I definitely got into situations where it was like, I don't know what to do here. Like they're blocking every single attack. And, I think what they want you to do is like switch to a different weapon style or use a specific move that's going to break the block. But that is that's a lot to keep in your head when you have 4 different fighting styles and different enemies that will break to different moves.
Yeah.
So in a certain way, it's almost a little bit too complex for what it is. But on the other hand, it's like I could see, like, I actually kind of want to go and look for like speedrunners or whatever, because I could see like people who are like really excellent at character action games just like breaking this thing wide open and doing some crazy shit.
They skip a lot of enemies. That's what I did too, especially near the end. I just stopped fighting people. But also, like to kind of go on your point, like the way that I got past shielded enemies most of the time is I threw shit at them. If I had an extra sword, I just keep throwing the sword at them until I break their shield.
Right.
Or break whatever they have. That would one way I would do it. If you can throw barrels or anything, that breaks their guard every time and kills them. When I fought enemies, especially late in the game that would block constantly, I would either stone them or I would find ways to get rid of them without the normal. Because you're right, it was so annoying just trying to wait until they were open.
Yeah. I think that's also one of the like fatal flaws of the game is that you do have these cool like magic abilities that you gain throughout the game, but they start you off with the showstopper, which is the stone prison, because it only costs 1 charge of magic, and like by the end of the game I had like 6, and it has like a nice like cone of effect in front of you, and it'll turn almost every enemy to stone. So like I would save it for like the really annoying enemies, especially if I could group them up into a pack and like get like 4 or 5 of them like in one shot and then just take them out. Because like by the end you're fighting the guys that have shields. Their shields also have spikes on them. So even if you like go to attack them when they block, like you'll actually take damage, and it gets like so annoying. And eventually what I started to do was there's a move with the sword and shield ability. So I would chunk, like I would throw my spare weapon or shield at the enemy just to get rid of it, and then do the move, I think it's Thief of Bell or something like that, where you actually take their weapon or their shield. Oh. And so either way, it would reduce their ability, right? So if you take their weapon, they can't really do much other than block, and then eventually you'll just like break their shield, or you'll take the shield away, and then it's no problem at all.
I never did that. I also did not use sword and shield at all. My go-to combo in this game was a lot of either great sword or dual wielding.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I always tried to switch to, because like the great sword, I had a square triangle combo I picked up at some point that would disarm people sometimes they shield. It would knock away their shield or it would break through it. And I fell in love with that ability, and I kept using it. And I did find out in this game, if you use the same ability too much, it will get mad at you and tell you to stop doing that.
Yes.
By the way. I don't know if you saw that or not, but it cracked me up.
Well, yeah, well, I think my feeling was that like once you would master it, if you would do it like right after you mastered it, it would like kind of penalize you for a little bit. But the thing about mastering a move is that it'll give you like health or magic like on a kill. But I think you do have to mix it up a little bit. But the thing that I love, and I'm just such a sucker for this in general with any video game, is how many wrestling moves you get to pull off in this game. There's just something, because like one of my go-tos with sword and shield was that you would do like light attack and then hard attack, and he would do this like kind of elbow check that would daze them. And so even for enemies that were armored up, once they were dazed, you could then grapple them and do the pile driver, which is like usually instant death. And like I never got tired of seeing that. It was just so satisfying.
I didn't do a lot of the wrestling.
Conan doing a suplex.
I don't like grapple moves in video games in general, and that's just a me thing in games.
Yeah.
I just tend not to use them in almost any game I play. I don't really have a good reason to why I do that. I just do.
Yeah, I'm probably just a bigger wrestling fan than you are. Like I'm that dude
are.
when I'm playing Saints Row the Third, where it's like I haven't DDT'd anybody in a while. Let me just run up to this pedestrian and DDT them.
Well, my other issue is later on, some enemies you couldn't grapple. They would like counter you if you tried to grapple them.
Right, but that's where that elbow move comes into play because it would daze them and open them up to the grapples.
See, I would do the elbow move, but then I would just kill them other ways.
Yeah.
Again, if you use the great sword a lot, like I did, you also behead people constantly, which is really cool.
There is that, yeah.
I don't know. It was able to break a lot of combos, and I just think it's cool that we played the game completely different. Like I never did sword and shield. If I had a shield, I would hold it, and usually I would just throw it because I just didn't want it.
Right. And my thing, cause I love, even though I'm not versed in Conan and its lore, I love barbarian shit, right? So like the barbarian is my favorite class on Diablo 3. Like I am a grognard melee guy in most RPGs that I play, to the point that like it actually makes certain games like Baldur's Gate 3 a little bit boring for me when I'm playing just like a bonk you on the head fighter type character, because there's so many other things that are cooler that you can do. But I love that shit. And yeah, for me, it was actually rankling me because I was like, oh man, sword and shield is actually like the most useful thing. But like, I want to just like have this great sword and be like lugging that thing around the whole time because I'm Conan, goddammit.
He does look really cool when you have a great sword, by the way. Like he just looks awesome with it.
Yes.
It's very fitting of him when he has a giant greatsword in his hand and you're just cleaving people's heads off. Like, it's really fitting.
Yeah. Like, even though I would say, like, the graphics aren't really up to, like, snuff for, like, the 360 and PS3 by 2007, like, I do like the general, like, look of the character models. And I know that they had tried to evoke, like, Frank Frazetta's art in the aesthetic. They don't get quite there, but I think that was also kind of ambitious for the time. This is the type of thing that I would love to see somebody take another stab at. Like, I would love to see like a really polished, like, not necessarily open world, right? But like a really polished, like, modern Conan action game that's not trying to be a survival game, that's not trying to be an MMO. Just like a really excellent, bloody, over the top action game. Because I think there's something here. Like, there's something that speaks to me about Conan. And I've always wanted to read the books. I actually do have a collection of some of the, like, I think it's like a collection of like 3 Conan stories in one volume that it's on my shelf, and I keep meaning to read it. And I'd wanted to read it before we did this podcast, but I ran out of time. But that's definitely on the list because there's something there for me. I just need to dig into it some more.
I mean, there's also, I think there's current Conan comics with Marvel, I think, if I'm right.
Most likely. He's kind of stayed in circulation pretty much our entire lives. So.
Yeah, he's been in comics since 1970. I know. Yeah, Marvel Comics has him now. Dark Horse had him from 2003 to 2018.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think actually when Marvel got him back, like they made him like part of the Marvel like universe. Like he was actually, I think, on an Avengers team for a bit.
Which to me makes absolutely no sense, but it's whatever. It's comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's still there are current comics of him coming out all the time, miniseries and stuff. So yeah, he's still very much in play now that Marvel has him.
Yeah.
Which makes me happy. Because, I mean, again, I don't know much about Conan. He's not, but he looks cool. Like, I mean, that Frank Rosetta art, I've seen it, over years. I'm like, that is always so damn cool. It just looks, I mean, that's what Conan's mostly known for, is that art. I feel like everyone knows that art.
Yeah, there's something very, very heavy metal about Conan, right? And that will always be the case. And there, there's something about, like, a really muscular dude with long black hair with a badass looking sword or axe with like a really hot lady, like, by his side and probably with a throne of skulls somewhere in the picture that's just always going to look awesome.
One thing that I thought was cool in the battle, especially if you fight later enemies, you can like knock off pieces of their armor too. Like you knock off their helmet or you knock off their chest piece or you break their weapon.
Yeah. Like I said, there's good ideas here. Sometimes great ideas, I think for me, a lot of it is like the actual behavior of the enemies would get like, they would become like more annoying to fight than fun to fight. Like because a lot of things, I will, when I'm playing games, if I'm getting frustrated, I'll kind of talk to the developers. I'll be like, this isn't fun, guys. Like, I don't know why you guys thought this was fun. And I definitely was saying that a lot, like, in the last, like, quarter of the game. But I was having a blast, for those first 3 quarters for sure.
I wasn't annoyed until really close to the end. That's when it got me right at the last areas when I was like, okay, this game needs to end. Like, yeah. Other than that, I wasn't really bored. Did you ever cleave anybody in half with a greatsword?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that was so much fun.
There's, and that's the thing is, I guess I was kind of hoping that there would be more like. So the way that like the really gory stuff happens is you have to like parry an attack and then hit the button.
Yeah,
and the parry window is pretty generous. The problem is that the window to follow up the attack is not generous whatsoever. So like a lot of times I would parry an attack but then miss the prompt. And I
and the buttons change because this is QTE time is what it is. It's like that era when they were like, let's put QTEs in everything and they don't have to make sense.
Yeah, and for the record, I actually really love QTEs. I've been on board with them ever since God of War. Well, actually since Shenmue. But the thing is that like a lot. So God of War, I think, really popularized them, even though they weren't the first game to do them. But they really kind of because they made it work. Like there's a certain logic to the way the QTEs work in God of War, where Conan does not understand the way that they work, and like it's very willy-nilly, and sometimes like the prompts come up like way too quickly or whatever. Like, and this was especially true on the final boss, where you would like drop his health down to 0, which would start a QTE. But one time I was in the middle of a combo and I did that, and I missed the first button press of the QTE, which then resulted in me taking damage and the boss getting half of his health back. Yep. And I was like, that is not okay.
I did that 2 or 3 times because I didn't realize there was a QTE because I kept hitting the button. And then I was like, oh, there's a QTE here. I need to just stop what I'm doing when I get close and just wait.
Yeah. And there's no logic to like some of the like in-world QTEs, like a lot of the ones where you're like having to like knock over statues or push things. It's like, all right, why is this input different than the last one? And they just felt like, well, you just have to press buttons, right? We just need to have you press buttons. And it's like, no, there has to be a certain like rhythm to it. And, there are definitely some parts where it's like, I don't actually feel like these button presses are actually like affecting anything on the screen where, again, going back to God of War, it's like you can actually see what those QTE button presses do to the enemies. And almost all of the time, like they correspond to the action that's happening. So like,
and it feels good.
Yeah, and like, because like in God of War, you're not pressing like the jump button to do an attack during a QTE, right? Yeah. Because like jump isn't an attack. Where here it's like, no, Simon says, just do what we tell you to do on the screen.
Pretty much. I mean, that's really all it was. My favorite was whenever you jump and you had to like climb up a rock and you had to tap B, and the way his arms looked, I was like, someone did not finish their job here because that animation like a monkey.
Is embarrassing.
It was terrible. He's like, I mean, it was one of the worst things I've ever seen in a video game, and it made me just crack up every time because he just flails his arms as he climbs. I'm like, this is god awful. Like, you really did not have to do this.
It makes him look so lame.
I hated every time I had to do it. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I also couldn't get I was never really good at doing the parries either. I tried to, and it would happen once in a great while, but I stopped trying. I would just murder things other ways.
Yeah, there were times when I could get it to work on purpose, but and it would definitely help to thin out the herd with like those groups of enemies that were just like turtling up too much.
Mm-hmm.
But the other problem that I had with the parry, and I didn't get to finish my thought about the gory stuff. So the gory stuff really happens off of a parry. That's when you get to see the really cool shit. Yeah. Where I wish that there was more of that, just as like an execution move or something like that. But as it is, like you're really only going to see that stuff off of a parry. But the other thing is that you can't control what move you want to do off of a parry. And there is like this like, there's a move mastery system in Conan where it's like, you might want to be mastering this particular like parry kill, but you didn't get the prompt for it. And, it's like, but maybe I wanted to do that one instead. Maybe I think this one looks cooler, but it's just whatever it decides to give you when you hit the parry is what you get to do.
Like you said earlier, it needed another, year in the oven like it should have had.
Yes. Yeah. I can only imagine what, a fully polished Conan game would have been like.
I'm assuming this game must have not sold well, but I did see it for years and years in GameStop. So
yeah, it's hard to say, and like it didn't come from like a really like well-established developer. They made Marvel's Rise of the Imperfects, before this. So
that, by the way.
I didn't either. I don't hate myself that much.
I heard nothing but terrible things about it, but yeah. Never touched it.
And I think this might have been their last game, actually.
It's a shame. They made a couple. They made Zombie Apocalypse, which was a downloadable game. They made PlayStation Move Heroes, Resistance Burning Skies, a Vita game, and Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified, also a Vita game, and they were done in 2012.
Okay, so this is basically their last like real game, because that other stuff sounds just like, mercenary work to just try to keep the lights on.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's 100% what it was. This was like probably their last like real pitch of, can we do something, and then it did not work out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a shame because, again, I think there's stuff here to like, and one thing that I hope that like the listeners of your show, over the years of listening to your show, get is that like sometimes go check out a 6 or a 7, right? Like I think so many people these days like, and partially it's because there's so many great games that come out every year, but it's like you get. Like my thing is like when I see people talking about like a objectively excellent game, they're like, oh, this game is trash, and it's like, you haven't played a bad game, have you? Like, you haven't played like a really bad game before. And this is not a really bad game, but like, I am such a champion of games of this caliber, right? Especially on the 360 generation. Like, man, I've got such fond memories of shit like Golden Axe Beast Rider and Eat Lead starring Matt Hazard and Bullet Witch.
Oh yeah, man. Really good.
Eat Lead's awesome. Like that is on my short list of games I would love to resurrect.
Oh, I played that game twice back in the day. That is a fun game. But I'm with you. I like the 360 had such fun, this weird shit that came out during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And this game fits right in there where it's something that, a lot of people probably play just for achievements. Like, okay, I can play through it, get some achievements, you beat it in a rental period back when that was a thing, So like I mostly had a good time with this game. I was surprised when I first started playing it a couple days ago, and I was like, okay, this is pretty fun. I did not like the first boss fight against the big barbarian. That was where I felt like I had some issues, but other than that, like I mostly was all right with the game. Like that was the only time where I was like annoyed.
Yeah, you fight him twice, and both fights are pretty annoying. But then like the sand dragon fight is like really cool, and it kind of comes close to God of War levels of like spectacle. The elephant skeleton boss is a really cool fight that I really enjoyed.
That was too. I mean, the game had some really cool moments. I mean, I wasn't bored. I mean, also like it did one of the things that I need a game to do, where as you kill people, you get experience, and you use experience to buy like different combos. I mean, some I would probably never even use, but I'm like, oh, cool, I'll just buy this, and you get more, and it was just fun like that.
Yeah, they did a really good job of turning, what I understand to be like. Because my understanding of Conan is like he's pretty much a mostly naked dude with a short sword that gets the job done with whatever. Where here it's like, oh no, now we've got like different pieces of armor that have like spells attached to them. Like they were introducing new mechanics like throughout the entire game, which was pretty impressive.
I mean, I felt like I was changing a lot. Like I wasn't bored. I mean, I had to get different weapons. I would get different combos I would just pull off randomly. I'd master combos, which would then get, as you pull off the combo, you get health back. Mm-hmm. I mean, also one thing I noticed that I was never really like dying, because if I started to get really low on health in the game, like, hey, we see you're dying, here's some health pickups all of a sudden. Like enemies will just start dropping health.
Yeah. And for me, like I'd be like, oh, I'm getting close to death. Let me bust out some pile drivers because I know that's going to give me some health. And also, I will say that like the game is really good about checkpointing, and also like good about having health pickups, like the actual like dedicated like health around the levels and stuff like that. So it's a pretty well balanced game. Again, right up until the very end, but thankfully, very thanks to very generous checkpointing, like it's not a problem, because like if I'd had to like do that last boss fight from the start every time, I wouldn't have finished it, Mike. I would have been like, my journey ends here.
Oh, there's no way I would have been able to do that 6-phase fight, which we'll go into detail a little bit later. There's no way in hell I would have been able to do that if it didn't checkpoint after each phase.
Yeah.
No way. Like that was like Ratchet and Clank 1 level bullshit to me. I don't like Ratchet and Clank 1, by the way. That final boss fight is just, I remember doing it with save states. I remember like thinking, how the fuck would I do this without save states? Because it just does not end. So, and there are no checkpoints. There is one thing that I did laugh about this game, is that a couple times in the game, Conan has to punch rocks. And I was thinking, you know what? It makes much more sense for Conan to punch rocks than it does for Chris Redfield.
Sure.
Way more sense. Like, I didn't question it. I'm like, okay, yeah, he's pushing a rock. Like, it makes sense. When Chris punched a rock, I was like, this doesn't really make sense here.
Yeah, like, I'm not sure if Conan's supposed to have, like, strength above like you're like a normal mortal man. But I was like, you know what? I'm fine. Like this makes sense to me. Sure, he's got Thor's strength. Yeah,
he pushes off pillars. None of it bothered me because to me it all fit the character. I mean, I don't know enough about Conan, but it fit for me. I'm like, I have no questioning, no issue. Like, this works. This is cool.
Yeah. The sense that I get is that Conan is able to do whatever Conan needs to be able to do for that particular situation.
And to kind of go back to what you're saying earlier, when you rescue the women, like, it gives you experience points too. But it always amused me every single time I would find a random woman, or sometimes I wouldn't notice them, and I'd hear, "Please help me!" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, there's somebody around here." I'd go find him, and it amused me every single time. It just did. It was just like, this is cool. This is just amusing.
Yeah,
so fun.
Again, not knowing much about the character, like, I feel like I learned a lot when he meets Akana for the first time, and she says, like, well, would you serve a woman? And he's like, service a woman, aye, and gladly. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I think I get who Conan is.
I love that. Was so good. That was so funny too.
Yeah, like I do like the facial animations, because like he would often get this like kind of like really wolfish, lustful grin sometimes. There's like a really funny part towards the end where you and Akana are looking for someone, and you find this like naked woman on a bed, telling you that like all the men are gone. And Conan just gets this grin looking at her, and Akana's like staring at him like, what the fuck, dude?
But I think that all fits Conan. I mean, as himself, I don't know much, but I feel like that fits the character.
Yeah.
I mean, even just looking at the old posters that you've seen for like the Conan movie, for example, you look at the Conan with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the cover has a half naked woman right next to him on his leg, like, and you look at some of those old prints from Frank, I forgot his name.
Frank Frazetta. Also, yes. Boris Vallejo would do like a lot of like Conan type stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually curious now to maybe read some Conan Marvel comics, the new stuff.
Yeah, I would like to check that out.
I don't know if I would.
And I think it's fair. Like, look, obviously, like, Conan is a character that comes from a certain age, right? Like, yes. He comes from the pulp era, and it's very much like a traditional male fantasy, right? Where we get that phrase. But I think there's still room for that. Like, it's when you understand what it is, right? It's like, no, this doesn't fit into our modern society, right? But like sometimes you just want something that's like dumb and puerile and like fires off certain parts of your brain. This exists in like the same part of my brain where I'm like super excited for bad CGI Gator the movie. like there's a part of me that just craves trash. And I'm not saying that Conan is trash, right? Like I'm sure that there's like some really excellent stuff in there over the years. But it is very much like a very immature, like,
oh yes,
type of entertainment that again I'm cool with in doses, right? I wouldn't want this all the time, but sometimes it's like, I was actually talking about this to a friend like recently, because I was like, man, I kind of miss the days of like just gratuitous nudity in movies. Like, you don't really see that anymore, and like sometimes like then the movie wasn't that great, but man, there were some reasons to watch it.
Oh, the character was originally from 1932 as its first appearance.
Yeah, I thought it was around that time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's old ass character.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he would have been like an inspiration to, like, not inspiration, but like he would have been the precursor to authors, like the big science fiction authors, right? Like Asimov and Heinlein and stuff like that. Like he was like right before them. Not saying that I don't think they really took anything from his work, but just like, I can imagine them like growing up reading this, right? Because like, and he kind of does sit like next to like John Carter of Mars from Edgar Rice Burroughs, which would have been like, probably 10, 15 years before that.
That's a good movie. I liked it when I saw it in theaters, but I know, yeah.
I can't divorce it from the books, and it was so not what I was wanting as a fan of the books, that I was just like, oh man, look what you did to my boy.
I've never read the books. I went and saw the movie randomly, and I'm like, oh, this is entertaining.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't read the books, I would have been totally fine with it. Like it's a perfectly serviceable, sci-fi fantasy romp. But I think going into it with expectations and having grown up loving those books, I was like, oh man.
That makes sense. I also did not like fighting the lions in this game that much until I got the hang of like the trick to them where you just hit them and then you immediately block because they're going to counter you.
Yeah, they're again, there's a lot of enemies in here that will stun lock you with their attacks in really annoying. Like the apes also will do this really like Yeah, I keep cutting myself off because I keep remembering like bullshit because there's enemies in this game where if it wasn't for the fact that video games are video games, they could just beat you because like if they just did the same move over and over and over again and didn't like change up their tactic, they'd win because there's just certain things that you just have nothing that you can do about.
Yeah, you need that. It really needed that extra year just to finish polishing it up. Some of the stuff.
It feels like it needed more playtesting and also more balancing and make the enemies like do things more than just like swipe block and then just like block and then instantly like swipe
Oh, for the record, you can skip tons and tons of enemies in this game. So I've been watching the speedrun while we're talking. He skips like everybody. He does not fight very much.
I can see that because it's very much like a segment, like it's level based, and then it's also the segmented within those levels. And I do have to say, like I miss the days of level based game design. I played Evil West last year, which is again just one of those like it's a really great B game that is a very much a throwback to this generation, this era of action games where everything is level based, right? Like try to find all the collectibles on the first time through. If not, like there's a new game plus waiting for you. It's got a dumb story with like a real like manly man protagonist that's really gruff and stuff, but it's really fun and it's really dumb also. And I really enjoyed it for that. I not everything has to be open world, guys.
I wish they knew that. I'm not a big open world guy. I mean, I have played a bunch in the last like 2 months, but other than that, I'm not. It's not my thing. I enjoyed I was really happy to have this game in the schedule because like next week is a much bigger game, and this was something that I was able to play quickly and not have to explore a giant world and have my weapons break.
Right.
It was just much easier. Yeah. Like this is nice. Oh, and that sand dragon, like that. You were right. That is like a God of War type boss fight where it just keeps going and you just keep fighting him as he. I really did enjoy that fight.
Yeah, and the payoff to it is so great. Like because you're going further and further up, like, the city walls of this area, and he's following you, and then you like hit his fall literally is like so good.
It did a good job. I was like, this is impressive. Like, this is really cool, and I love the 360 era. I think 360 is when I fell in love with video games way more because that's when games got a lot more accessible too. Like where you had a lot more difficulty settings. They made games where they're like, we want most people to beat our games as long as you try. Like you will get through the game. We will have enough checkpoints. We will have enough difficulty setting. We won't beat you up in our rental period. We'll let you get through the game. And I think that's why I fell in love with gaming at this point, personally. And this game's full of that.
The 360 remains one of my all-time favorite consoles, and a big part of that is the library. And I think another part of that is just me having the disposable income at the time to buy the games that I wanted to buy, like when they came out for the most part. And then also, this is around the time when games would start to drop in price very quickly if they didn't sell. So you could always find like really excellent games for, $20-30 without fail. And then eventually, like as the generation went on, it's like, you can find really excellent games for $5 or $10, used. So
I mean, and GameStop was in their heyday. You had buy two get one free sales all the time, like every couple months.
Yeah,
pretty sure with this one too was a case where I walked in and they just had a bin of games that are all buy two get one free under $15, and I just started picking out games. And God, I miss those days.
Yeah.
Those days are long gone, though. That's why I'm a digital gamer now for the most part. So
same. Yeah. Well, and also like with the modern consoles, they've kind of taken so much of the fun out of buying the physical games that it's usually not even worth it. Or in some cases, like, they're not even getting physical releases anymore. Like Alan Wake 2 didn't get a physical release. Yep. Baldur's Gate 3 was not going to get a physical release until it sold bajillions of copies. They're like, you know what? Yeah, we'll go ahead and release it on disc also. We'll get the physical money too.
For the Sand Dragon, it took me a really long time to figure out I had to punch those two different blocks. I just kept fighting him and wondering why his health kept coming back.
Yeah, I at a certain point I was like, there's more. I can climb here. Okay, and I think that might be one complaint that I have about the game overall is that it's not great about signposting. Like there were certain places where I'm like, I'm supposed to climb here. Oh, that doesn't look like something I'm supposed to climb on. Or I think it was the last level or the next to last level, I got stuck and I'm like, all right, clearly you want me to throw this boulder at something, but I don't see anything to throw this boulder at, guys. And then I had to look it up. It's like, oh, there was this wall off to the side that's not highlighted in any way. It's really hard to tell that it's like just not part of the scenery. And that's where you have to, break through. And it's like, oh, okay, like maybe swing the camera around just a little bit, something.
I found that out completely by accident because I was just throwing rocks, just to throw rocks, and I just hit a wall. And I'm like, oh, cool. And I just went through there and continue on the game and no issue. And I was just messing around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see that being difficult to figure out without it. It doesn't notify you.
Yeah. There was a real fun part where, like, I think you're fighting apes, but like the roof caves in and like they give you like 6 or 7 boulders all at the same time. And it's like, all right, my course is clear. I'm just like chucking boulders at all of them until they're all dead.
That was fun. I enjoyed throwing rocks at people. I like the fact that in this game you also light stuff on fire sometimes. I thought that was cool that they added that in.
Yeah, there's these parts where there's these like warrior villages or warrior huts where they'll just keep like almost like a clown car style, just keep coming out of the huts until you burn them down. And that was actually kind of fun where I'll just like run around with the torch before I would even engage in the fight and just be like, fuck your homes, and just start burning everything down. Once
I figured out that's what the game was doing, I stopped. I would not fight a single guy until I burned all the tents. So I'm like, what's the point? They're just going to come back. So
yeah.
Another thing I thought was interesting, which I haven't seen in a game before, when you get shot with arrows in this game, you got to pull it out of your body. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And
I've never had that in a action game I can think of that I played that's done that.
It's probably happened in one. I feel like Ghost of Tsushima might have had a thing like that, but I'm not quite sure. But here it just feels like so Conan, right? Dude's not wearing armor or anything like that. He's just like, yeah, like, I don't care if you shot me with an arrow. I'm just going to pull this out and keep on moving. And it's like, that is so cool.
I mean, you really have to later in the game because then you get the explosive arrow guys too.
Yes.
And if you don't pull it out, you blow up. So I remember I found that out the hard way. I'm like, I'll get to it later. And then boom. And I'm like, yeah, we ain't doing that again. That hurts. Oh, I'm just watching, like, as I'm watching speedrun, God, you can skip so much content.
I believe it.
Just skipping enemies after enemies. Like, I killed everybody just about to the end of the game because I wanted experience. And I was having fun. Like, I was just having a blast just killing enemies. Like, this was a really fun, put a podcast on type game and just play.
Yeah. I will say that some of the encounters later on, and I guess, it didn't really occur to me that you could, like, move on and skip parts of it. But some of it would be like, oh, okay, there's more enemies. Like they would kind of just keep coming at certain points in the game. And I will say that, like, another complaint that I have, and this is definitely probably a product of its truncated development time, is there isn't a lot of enemy variety. And even though it's a short game, like after the first couple hours, I was already getting tired of fighting like the regular enemies for the most part. And they do start to change it up later on, but again, I think if there were more enemy variety, or if the enemy behavior was more engaging, that would have gone a long way to making what's already like really fun combat, like taking it to that next level of being like, oh no, this is something that like, really should have been recommended to more people. Where here it's like, I can totally understand why it, did whatever numbers it did and didn't really like make a splash. Is like, especially in the same year that God of War 2 comes out, it's like, you're looking at like a next gen game and a last gen game, and the last gen game is mopping the floor with the next gen game, and it's like, that's a bummer.
But I guess they were still kind of learning the system in 2007, weren't they, for the 360? I mean,
yeah, I feel that like it was definitely like 2006 with Gears of War, where everybody was like, okay, no, now the next generation is here. Now we know what these systems can do, right? And this would have been in development, before Gears of War came out. So, they were probably operating on, not really knowing even what the 360 was capable of and stuff like that. So I can totally see a scenario where, they just were kind of almost, for all we know, they might have been aiming for PlayStation 2, right?
And then got pushed.
Yeah.
I could have seen this running on PS2, like a little bit different, but yeah, you could see that.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, it's probably in development for a couple of years anyway, so yeah, wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, because from what I saw, like God of War came out in 2005, and then it was their inspiration for this game, and so they made it in like the 2 years, following that, which is again pretty impressive when you consider, the games are now on average taking 5 to 6 years a pop, where. You used to get like 3 games from the same series in one console generation, and now you're getting 1.
Yeah, I'm hoping that changes eventually. Like we get less AAAs and more just smaller things.
For me, I don't know. To me, I think it's just that I feel that there has to be like a breaking point where the technology gets easier to use to where they're still able to make AAA quality games, but they're just able to do them in a faster time frame. I feel that, like, and again, I'm not a developer, obviously, but just looking at what Unreal Engine 5 is purported to do, it seems to me that, like, there's a lot of stuff in place there that should make things easier for developers to hopefully, take a lot of that, like, grind and grunt work out of the day-to-day work and help them get stuff up to speed more quickly. But, who's to say? Like, games are getting more expensive to make still, and I do miss the middle ground, right? Again, I love B games. I love games that score 6s and 7s.
I do too.
Yeah,
I mean that's what this is. I mean this is for the most part a competent game. Yes, the enemies do get kind of boring after a while. I didn't really notice it because the game was too short. I mean, and they went from more barbarian style warriors to eventually guys with armor and some monsters. So it didn't bother me, but I can definitely see where you're coming from.
Yeah. And
also after the last few games I played for this show, I was so happy to have something easy and short and where I just get to kill things, you don't have to worry about anything. So that was also played a big part in my enjoyment.
Yeah, for sure. And even for me, like, I was never complaining about the shortness of games. This was around the time when I was playing so many games that I would appreciate a short game, right? Like, I remember specifically picking up Enslaved: Journey to the West because I heard that it was like a 7-hour game. And it looked cool. And I was like, that sounds right up my alley. And I bought it and I played it and I beat it very quickly. And I was like, that was perfect. That was exactly what I wanted.
I feel like as a community, when it comes to gamers, we've accepted shorter games and don't throw a fit for the most part. But that wasn't the era.
No.
It's not that way?
No, I think it's the opposite. I routinely see people, like, trying to decide if a game like I'm trying to think, like a game like Death Stranding, right? Is worth, like $20 on sale, right? Like, is it worth it? And it's like, that game is, like, so long, guys.
Yeah,
like,
how is that not worth it?
And that's the thing is that, like, it's caused developers to make their games longer and longer because people complain if games aren't long enough these days.
I thought that went away finally.
No,
I don't pay attention to people.
No, it's still very much a thing with your average consumer. Even though your average consumer doesn't finish their games, it's a really weird catch-22. And I'm at the point where it's like I'm so sick of, like, games that are, like, that pass, like, the 60-hour mark and, like, for my show, it's like, we try to say, well, it's not like a mandate. It's more of that I'm trying to keep up with my co-host who plays everything, like, and finishes it in a week because he's a Time Lord. But, we stay pretty current, and, like, we were looking at next year, and there's, like, in the first quarter alone, I think there's, like, 5, like, 60 to 100-hour games that we want to play, all just in the first quarter.
That is just too much. I mean, I had played a few big games recently. I played Gotham Knights. I played next week's game, which I'll talk about at the end of this. Like, I played a few bigger games, and, like, I just went through them faster and didn't do everything the game had to offer.
Yeah, sometimes that's what you got to do.
I have a rule with open world games. I will do stuff to a point. Like, I will do all the side content that opens up, and as soon as I get to the point where I'm like, fuck this, then I just do straight story, and that's it. So I will always screw around with all the side stuff first until I get to that point, because it always comes eventually.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my rule of thumb with the game. But who the hell is doing everything in an open world game? I mean, it's got to be compared to the achievements, it's a very small amount of people. So why are you bitching?
Yeah, it's a weird mentality to me. Now, for me, it depends on how much fun I'm having with a game, right? So, like, I got every trophy on Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor because I had so much fun playing that game, and the systems in there were just a blast. I got the platinum on Horizon for Zero Dawn because I just loved everything about that game. But then come to Horizon Forbidden West, and I was like, this is too much game. I can't do all this stuff. So at a certain point, I was like, I just need to beeline it through the story. I need to see how this ends. Because I was really invested in the story, but there was just, like, way too much that you could do outside of the story. But then, then flash forward to just, like, a month ago, and I'm like, I got the platinum for Spider-Man 2 because I, like, never got tired of doing all the Spider-Man 2 shit because it's really fun to do Spider-Man 2 shit.
I just started playing that a couple days ago, or Christmas, because my wife surprised me and bought me a PS5. Nice. And I wasn't expecting that at all. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I started playing Spider-Man 2 after I waited a day for it to install.
Yeah.
It's fun. I just did the first part, the Sandman part, and I'm like, I'll get back to this later.
Yeah.
I've been busy. because I had to play this and the other game I was playing for the show, and I was like, well, I'll get to it.
Yeah.
But no, Spider-Man 2 looks really cool. I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes games just grab you where you just want to do open world stuff, but as long as it's optional, I don't mind. You want to make your game 100 hours optional shit, go right ahead. Will I touch it? Absolutely not, but I'm happy it's there. Like, for those people that want it.
The issue for me comes in places of games that are excellent, but they're 100 hours without doing optional stuff, like
that's
Persona
an issue
5.
For me too.
Yeah. Like, Persona 5 is going to, like, no matter what you do, like, even if you don't, if you're not trying to do everything, it's just a slow game, right? It's going to take you a long time. It's a great game. It's got, like, one of my favorite RPG stories and possibly my favorite RPG cast, but it's a lot.
I get that. I'm actually going to replay Persona 4 hopefully next year for this show. I played it once, but I'll be on my Steam Deck, so it won't be as hard to get through. That monster of a game.
Yeah. I'm really excited for Persona 3 Reloaded because Persona 5 was my first one, so now I want to go back and play the other ones. I mean I did play Persona 1 on the PS1, but like we don't talk about that.
I'm sure it's not good. I've never touched that. I've only played Persona 4 of that series of any of them, SMT or any of that stuff. I've never touched that really. Even though I bought Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne the day it came out at EB Games, I picked it up. So I've never played it, but it's over there on my shelf for PS2. So maybe one day I'll play it.
Yeah.
I highly doubt it. But then it did get re-released too, and I think I was eyeing it again, like, I'll buy it again. Why not?
Yeah, that's a real slippery slope is when you buy a game when it comes out, thinking you're going to get to it, and you never get to it. And then you buy like the remake or remaster of it when it comes out, thinking you're going to get to that, and then you never get to that.
I'll buy it at like a deep sale. That's my rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Like I was like one thing about this game that really kind of because it's a licensed game, so we're never gonna like this never came on PC, which made me sad. I would love to have downloaded some PC for a couple bucks and play it on my Steam Deck.
Right.
But that wasn't an option. I actually had to hook up my PS3 and play it on PS3, and that was a little annoying for me personally. Just because of my setup. Steam Deck is so easy to just take with me wherever I go. If I gotta take my wife somewhere, I just bring it with me. I can go play. If I'm, things are slow, I can just it's always there, and it makes life so much easier for a podcaster. That beats games in a week. But I do want to talk a little about that elephant boss. That one kind of surprised me too. I thought that kind of felt like a God of War boss too. You fight a giant elephant demon skeleton. Like that was cool.
Yes.
I guess people are worshiping the elephant god or something is what I think is happening, but I wasn't really paying attention to the story.
Yeah, I'm betting that this is probably from the actual Conan lore, right?
That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, which was probably really cool for like the Conan fans who like got this game. They're like, oh shit, like they've got the the elephant god in here or whatever. For me, it was just like a really cool set PC boss fight that was very satisfying and one of those things where it's like you get the gotcha where it's like you're done and then it's like, oh no, it still wants some more.
This game did that a lot.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind it. Like, I mean, each boss, once I got used to it, each boss was going to be multi-phase and you had to like pay attention to what the game wanted you to do after you drained the health bar. I was fine with it. I would also use the guide a little bit just to kind of look up what to do because I'd get unsure and then the boss fights. But mostly I just could play and just have fun and just murder things and it was just fun.
Yeah. And it was satisfying to like, try to find like I got, I didn't find all the secrets obviously, but I got most of them. I think I did have issues with doing the triumvirates where you had to light up these 3 emblems to like increase your health, your rage, or your magic. Because some of them were just like because it was a timing based thing. So you had to like get to the next symbol before it stopped glowing. But Conan is a slow dude. And
you have the
spacing.
More time than you think.
Okay.
Because I thought the same thing too, where I'm like, this is too, I'm just not going to bother. But there were a couple times when I did it and I noticed as long as I knew where it was and I went straight to it, I was completely fine. Like there was enough time to do that. As long as you clear out the enemies, then go and do it. It wasn't too bad, but it was a little confusing and I would have liked to have a real timer or something because you're right, Conan moves slow.
Yes.
Not a fast person.
Right.
The game does a good job of giving you weapons constantly, of letting you change up weapons. Like enemies will drop weapons. You'll find things that hold on to weapons. Like you'll just find new weapons all over the place if you want to switch up your style, which I thought. Yeah,
I really appreciated that because, on one hand I was like, oh man, it'd be cool if you could just like switch to every style on the fly. But I actually did like the idea of, and this actually I think fits with the character where it's like, you're holding two weapons, but you want a shield, and so you just chunk this weapon at the nearest enemy, and then go pick up the shield that's on the floor, right? Or grab this great sword off of the corpse of the enemy you just beat. So it feels like really in keeping with the character, and I was surprised that even though I did gravitate towards the sword and shield move set for my own personal preferences, like I was changing it up a lot because it just it felt good to do.
I just love the fact that that this game gave us that opportunity to do that, and the fact that me and you played completely different.
Yeah, I think that's
also,
really neat.
Whenever I fought enemies I didn't like you were talking about, like the turtle guys, anytime there's a turtle in the enemy, weapon after weapon after weapon got thrown in their face, and they do go down pretty quick after that. Did you ever get caught in the whip QTE guys that whip you and start throwing you around?
No. I got caught in the whip. Like there was like that bolo that the barbarian boss the second time around will hit you with. I got hit by that a couple times, but I broke out of it before. I'm assuming if you don't break out of that thing, he just kills you in one shot.
Instant kill is what the guide said. They're like, get out of it now. They're like, don't get far away from him. Make sure you're in his face constantly, because if you get away from him, he'll do the bolo moon. He'll instantly kill you if you don't do the QTEs fast enough.
Yeah. Oh, that was one annoyance that I had on this game. And it's actually an annoyance that I have with the Souls games. And I thought that, I'm wondering if this actually predates like FromSoft's design, or if this was just a thing that I never noticed before. The homing animations on certain moves where, because usually with like a big enemy, right? Like you see the wind up for their move, and so you move out of the way. But in FromSoft games, they're like, fuck you, I'm just going to spin around like on a dime at the last second and hit you anyway. And there's a lot of the bigger enemies in Conan that do that. And I'm wondering if they actually like beat FromSoft to the punch there, or if this was already a thing in some games. I just don't remember it. But I notice it now because, it happened to me all the time in Elden Ring, and it sucks.
Yeah, no, I'm assuming it's just a video game thing, but now you mentioned, I can't really think of games that have it either.
Yeah,
so,
because
I don't know.
I play a lot of character action games and stuff like that. And I do remember a time where it's like, no, you dodge out of the way of the big attacks, and you're not there when the attack lands because they've already committed to the attack.
Yeah.
But FromSoft is like, no, that only applies to you as the player. Like, we can do whatever we want. And so this 15-foot 10-foot wide enemy is so quick that they can just completely turn around like 180 degrees and still thwack you with this thing like mid-swing. And it's like, that's bullshit.
I didn't notice that too much.
For me, it was definitely the like the dual wielding statues towards the end, and then that second fight with the barbarian where like he had this move where it's like, oh, you just get that for free, don't you? Like no matter what I do, I'm gonna get hit by this, 9 times out of 10.
God, he was annoying. Like, there's a story to this game, but it's irrelevant for the most part. That I guess Conan went to some place and woke up a god, essentially, some kind of demon god, and then that's why you lose all your equipment, and that's why you're going, as you beat bosses, you get your equipment back and then get spells, which I didn't use spells a lot. I just use the one spell. I mean, there's a meteor spell I use sometimes. I never use spell 3 or 4 that you get because I just didn't care.
I use them each once, but again, like the Stone Prison is so versatile, and the thing is that like the more powerful spells take up more charges of your magic. So it's like, why would I waste 3 slots on this one Raven spell when I can do Stone Prison 3 times for the same amount and kill more enemies over time that way? But yeah, it's kind of what I probably expect from like a Conan story is like, yeah, he wanders into a situation, kills a bunch of dudes, like woos some ladies, and then goes on an adventure. And by the end, like, the lady that he wooed either is dead or missing, and he just goes about, his life. But I did like the story framing where it starts. Actually, it made me laugh. So it starts with this old lady telling a story to like a kid before bed, and she's telling you the story. And then throughout, you at the end, you find out that like the old lady telling the story was actually Akana, the woman that was by your side, but the kid's gone. And I'm like, what happened to the kid you were telling the story to, lady?
I didn't notice that. I didn't pay enough attention to the story. I like story in games. This is just one of those games where I'm like, I just want to kill things. That's it.
Yeah, that's why you're here. Again, it is a very, pulpy, puerile, like, it gets the job done, right? Like, we're not going to be thinking about this game in depth, a week from now, right?
No.
But it's fine. It was. I mean, hey,
now it will be set. We'll be one of the few podcasts that actually covered this game, I'm sure. So
yes.
Hey. I don't see this game being something that people are talking about quite often. There are a few stuff on YouTube, but not a lot. But there's a few things on YouTube for this game.
Yeah. I looked for a Matt McMuscle's What Happened, and there wasn't that, but he did have a Flophouse Plays of it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but I was really hoping there'd be something a little more in-depth. But again, like, it doesn't even seem like there was really like much of a disaster about this game, and it's not like the game was like super anticipated or hyped before it came out. I think it was just like, oh, someone's making a Conan game. That might be good.
I mean, I feel like I was interested in it, but yeah, I feel like the majority of people were like, okay, who cares? It's it's a Conan game. Like, Conan wasn't a big... I feel like Conan wasn't a big character at this time, but...
I don't think Conan's ever really been like a big character, other than maybe around the time that the Schwarzenegger movies were coming out. I think it's just always been like it's had its fan base, and this game snuck in, I think, a little bit. It was too early to get in when people were tired of this type of game, but it was just early enough to be like, it's like, oh, it's a God of War clone, right? Like, straight up, like that's what this game was referred to as, and it's like, well, yeah, you can't really deny that, but. Yeah, I was looking some stuff up also because I was thinking to myself, man, there were so many games that copied God of War in such a like quick period of time. But I was thinking of Rygar, but actually Rygar came out in 2002, and I do remember that now because when I first played God of War, I was like, oh, they ripped off Rygar because like the combat is like very similar.
I've never played
the PS2 3D Rygar game.
I know what you're talking about. I've never played it.
It's good. It is another solid B title, right? Anything that God of War may have taken from Rygar as inspiration, like, it obliterated Rygar from the consciousness of people because it did it so much better.
Yeah, it's not a game I ever hear people talk about. So
yeah,
once in high school, someone's like, "Yeah, you should play this," and I'm like, "What the hell is this?" But that's it. Now, the more I'm watching, I'm happy to say how much you can skip. I did use the Stone Prison ability a lot on enemies I didn't want to deal with because it would help me get rid of their shield problems.
Yeah.
To turn them to stone. One thing I thought was interesting, the way you heal yourself is you drink big bottles or big caskets of wine, pretty much, or pots of wine. I thought that was hilarious.
Again, seems very in keeping with the character, right? Like, Conan is a simple man. Like, he cares about battle, food, and women in that order.
It was just, it did remind me a lot of like the old Golden Axe games.
Yes.
Kind of had that feel to it. I just like fantasy setting stuff like this. I've always been passionate about it.
Me too.
I like the fantasy setting.
Yeah, and this is definitely a darker fantasy, and that is one thing that I did know about the character is that he hates magic, right? So like,
yes.
I'm surprised they didn't play that up a little bit more, like maybe him commenting about how he hates relying on this power or whatever, like. But that might have just been like, well, we need to have you be able to do more stuff than just hack and slash, right? So video games, right? That's why you can do this shit.
I feel like he makes a comment about the armor when he puts it on, but I can't remember. I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to what Ron Perlman was saying. So
yeah, you're better off that way.
I wasn't invested in the story. I was just having fun.
He's a fine actor, but and a lot of times in cases like this, I'm like, that was probably the fault of like the voice direction more than the actual like voice actor. But I'm also not a fan of getting celebrities to voice characters in video games when you could have gotten like a dedicated voice actor that is used to doing it. It is.
Like, people won't hear this for a bit, or not. They'll hear this episode. They won't hear what I'm talking about. We did an episode on Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, the anime, and one of my big complaints is, yes, it's awesome you get back all the people, but the voice these are not voice actors, and some of them do not sound good at all.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is like the top of the list, and she's also like the main actress in the anime. And it's I'm
way too attached to that movie. I'll just say that when I watch that show and it deviates from what I expected, I'm like, I like this movie a little too much to be able to handle anything different.
That part I didn't have any problem with, but I do agree that like some of the actors are delivering like pretty flat performances. And it's kind of a bummer, but then some of them are great, like Kieran Culkin, and I think Chris Evans does a great job. But it's definitely uneven, and because you're right, like voice acting is different from camera acting, and not all of them, not all of they didn't study for that, right? It's not what they do in their day job.
You don't need you didn't need a celebrity in this game. Like, you could have, like you said, just get some good voice actor that can do a gruff voice and can pull off Conan. You don't need Ron Perlman.
Exactly. Yeah. Although I did find it pretty interesting because I want to say that the Jason Momoa movie came out around the same time as this, or maybe not.
2011.
But Ron Perlman plays Conan's father in the Jason Momoa movie, which I thought was kind of funny.
Oh, okay. I have no memory of that movie other than it exists and Momoa's in it.
I didn't have any memory of it until I was watching it earlier today. And then also, in another weird connection, Rose McGowan plays the daughter of the villain in the Jason Momoa movie. And again, she was supposed to play Red Sonja in the Robert Rodriguez Red Sonja movie when they were still together. So that's interesting that, like, she was still kind of tangentially, part of this in a movie.
It would have been cool to see Red Sonja in this game, too. Just because she's part of that same universe, right?
I think she is. I'm honestly not sure, Mike. Like, I've always associated her with Conan, but I think it's because in the Red Sonja movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger is in it, but I don't think he's playing Conan because I don't think they had the license to Conan, but he was Conan.
It looks like, her first appearance is in Conan the Barbarian 23 in 1973 in Marvel.
Okay, cool.
So yeah,
okay. She's the Marvel character. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
That's probably some of the issues too, is that she's owned by Marvel. So she's not owned by the Conan probably thing, but she was from Conan. Who knows with licensing crap.
Right. Yeah.
I really hate licensing.
At some point, for the longest time, like Marvel has not been, it's been like Dynamite Comics has been publishing Red Sonja for years. So that's interesting.
I think they're publishing that again, maybe now that like Marvel's actually picked up that stuff. I mean, they're doing Conan, so I'm assuming they're doing Red Sonja.
I'm not sure. Like,
I don't buy comics. I just read them online.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I was getting like previews every month from my comic shop, but I remember always seeing, Dynamite Publishing do it because, Red Sonja would be one of those books that would have like 18 variant covers for every issue because like you just, you get like different artists to do like really, pin-uppy, covers of Red Sonja because of course.
Yeah, that's what they're there for.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's starting to end though, by the way, all those different comic covers. I think that's starting to go away finally. I think they've started to realize that it's like diminishing returns, with all that stuff. And that's from listening to Ryan Higgins constantly on Comic Conspiracy. Yes. I know you probably listen to that too. Oh yeah. Every week. It's one of the few podcasts now that I don't listen to a ton of podcasts, unfortunately. That's the one that I always try to listen to them every week. Nice. Or when they skip weeks, when they don't tell anybody. Yeah. Which I don't know what that's like. I haven't missed a week in 5 years, so that to me. That's pretty impressive. Hey, I'm about to be 5 years next week, or 2 weeks from the time that this is published, or a week from when this is published. 5 years in a row, haven't missed a single week. So yeah, I don't know how you do it, man, because you also release like multiple episodes in a week, and 3 a week. If we didn't take our like 6 month to sometimes 2 month like hiatus every year, like our show would have like ended years ago. See, for me, I don't have a co-host anymore, so it's just different groups of people. That's how I do it. True. I'm the only person that is taking on that burden, and I love it. So, and my wife is okay with it, so it works. Yeah. But that's for me, like but I guess also there's a difference between the way we produce our shows, right? Because like I do like a ton of editing when I probably don't need to. And so that definitely takes a toll where I'm like, I need a break. Like Oh yeah, no, my edit usually takes double the time whatever it took to record it is how long it takes me to edit it on average. Yeah. Because I don't put music in very often. I don't do any of that type of stuff, so it's much quicker. Another boss that I forgot about completely until I was watching the speedrun is the Sorceress Queen, the one that's inside that giant like goblet that looks like that one's not great. No, she was a bit annoying, but it was, for diversity, I guess. I mean, it was something different like the other bosses. This is one that you have to kind of wait, and then she looked like a snake, and it was cool, but she was annoying, yes. Yeah. Not as annoying as the final boss, though, which is an all-timer. Oh. Can we talk about that now? Is it time? Okay. Well, should we mention this? There's also a squid I forgot about, too. Oh, that was awesome. That was fun. A whole level of just you fighting a squid on a boat. It reminded me of the Hydra. Yeah. That was one of those. I forgot. Thank you. Yeah, I forgot about that because it was it was like a 5-minute level, but it was so cool. Like yeah, I was really impressed with that. And it's, again, it's like a really big set piecey moment. And like, there's parts where you got to like stop it from pulling the boat over. And it's like grabbing your crew and transforming them into like shadow enemies that you have to fight. Like you get to like cut off its tentacles. It's a really cool fight. And then it like there's a part at the end when you after you do the QTE where Conan like jumps into its mouth, and I was like, come out the eye socket.
And at first he was like just like stabbing upwards through the head from the inside, and I was like, well, I guess that's the next best thing. But then he came out through the eye socket, and I was like, yes.
It's just, yeah, he pushes the eye out and climbs out. Conan
that actually reminded me of the Hydra battle from God of War 1.
It's very much like that, and I had forgotten some of this stuff, but as I'm clicking through a YouTube video to kind of just to refresh my memory, and I completely forgot about that fight because it's just, like you said, it's just a 5-minute thing. You just do it, and it's a really cool set piece.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, no, we can talk about the final fight when you get all your armor, you go inside some portal, looks like Stargate, and then you end up wherever in some, I don't know, dark prison is what it's called, where you fight the final boss, which is ridiculously annoying.
Having navigated a bunch of platforming sections that this game is not built around, by the way, like parts where you're like having to jump from platform to platform as they're crumbling, and like Conan's jump is very like short and shallow, and again, that's where a lot of my deaths actually occurred up until I got to the final boss. I've played this more recently than Mike, so I'll take point, and then if you want to like interject, by all means. But because this is fresh in my head, I did this like just a couple hours before we started recording.
Sooner than me.
So you're fighting like the dude, and first off, it's a terrible design. It's a very ugly, boring looking boss design, especially compared to the other stuff that you've already fought. And he's doing his normal bullshit. It's like, okay, there's some of these attacks are annoying because it's just like he's kind of getting them for free. You take down his health, and then it starts a QTE, which you have to do. But then you have to like rotate the platform that he's on with this giant gear. But when you start to do that, two things happen. He goes into the middle of the arena and he starts like throwing out these like long tendrils that he sweeps around, and you can dodge them. You can jump over them and duck under them. But at the same time, these like, shadow enemies come up out of this goo and come at you, and they don't have any weapons. They're just like kind of like bum rushing you with their hits, which you can block easily. If it wasn't for the fact that the tendrils will automatically break your block and leave Conan open to just getting bum rushed and getting stun locked into oblivion. And that is one of those things where I was like, nobody tested this, and this is where I think that it feels like a Steam piece of shovelware, like where it's like nobody, there's no way. I refuse to believe that anybody looked at this actually what's more realistic, it was play tested. They gave their complaints up, kicked it up to where it needed to be kicked up to, but then THQ was like, no, we got to launch this thing now. And they were just like, well, it is the final boss, so I guess it doesn't really matter, like who's going to even get here anyway, right? But it is such annoying, frustrating bullshit.
Well, there's a couple things about it. Like when you're fighting those assholes, what the guy told me to do is you gotta grapple them often as you can, because if you grapple them, you're invincible when the tentacles hit you.
Yes, and that is what I resulted to, because of I checked with the guide. But the problem is that when you hit the grapple button, sometimes Conan doesn't want to grapple. Sometimes Conan just wants to punch, and punching isn't going to get the job done.
For me, like, oh god, this is where I feel like I must have played this game for an hour at this point. Maybe, I mean, it was a while that I was doing this fucking fight.
Yeah,
and I was getting so irritated because first you fight the guy, and I got his pattern down pretty quick. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
You hit him, then you have to do a QTE, and each time you do it, it starts off the same, and then they add a little bit more to the QTE each time.
And also they change the buttons. Like, oh,
I mean, I had to just pay attention. I had to just stare at the screen and not press anything till the right button came up, because you press the wrong button too soon, they go, oh, too bad. Yeah. And I would just kill myself and then reload the checkpoint, because thank God they realized that there's a checkpoint, because you have to do this 3 times. You have to deplete his health bar, then run over, do a QTE event with him, then do a QTE event to get this wheel turning where he does a tendril. Then you have to, and luckily there's a checkpoint between each part. Otherwise, I would have just quit the game right there.
Yeah, because like you said, it's actually 6 phases, right? Like you deplete his health 3 times, but then after you deplete his health, then you have the tendril section. So it's like, there's like 2 parts to each like life bar, basically.
It's ridiculous. And if you screw up a QTE, he sucks away your health, and then he gets half his health. And I would usually just kill myself and start it over. I'm like, I'm not gonna bother.
Yeah, it's oh man.
And the last part, when he does the extra tentacles, the guy told me you want to save up all your magic so you can do a big spell that makes you invincible, I guess. So you can just sit there and do the wheel. I didn't do that.
I didn't have any magic left.
Me either. And because I didn't read that last sentence of the guide until I was already in the fight, and I'm like, oh, that's great. And it took me a few tries to finally just get the guys off me because I couldn't grab them for some reason in the last set. They would not be grabbed. And if I tried to grab them, they would always bum rush me and stun lock me and kill me.
Yeah.
I had to run around, wait till he stopped, murder them, and took a couple tries. Then I could finally do the wheel when he stops doing his tentacle bullshit.
Yeah. Then like to add insult to injury, like then you have to do another QTE to like end the fight. And that was like probably, I mean, I did it in the first try, but it was the perfect example of like this QTE doesn't match whatever's happening on the screen. And also, why wasn't this just a cutscene? And I'm a fan.
2007.
So, yeah, I'm a fan of the boss fight. Like I think it's a lost art. I think a lot of games don't really do it very well anymore, but these types of games typically do them better than others. And I think for me, what makes a great final boss fight is that it should kind of be like the test of everything that you've learned throughout the game, right? Like you should kind of have to bring all of your toys to the table to like take out this boss. This is the opposite of that, where it is a combination of all of the problems of the game in one like distilled form. And like, honestly, like, you know, because you beat this like probably about a week before
Actually,
I did.
Beat this Friday.
So a few days before me. So for me, you know, it's fresh in my head, and it's like it left like a really bad taste in my mouth. And so like it was good to talk about like the beginning of the game, you know, in this podcast. I was like, no, there actually was a lot of stuff that I liked about this game, but goddamn that last level.
It's very 2007. It's very, like you said, they didn't tune it enough because somebody didn't give a shit. You know, up above, most likely some corporate assholes like, no, just ship it away. I want my money now.
Yes.
And I mean, this is before the time you could I mean, it was just a little too much. And I also noticed you couldn't hit them with quick attacks. You had to use strong attacks. You had to use the Y button. I could.
Well, I was using like certain like actual combos. So like I was dual wielding for this one, and there was this one specific combo that I had that was very effective, which was light, hard. Because the third hit of that combo would usually break a block, and then I could like free him up to like for some free damage.
Okay, you did it completely different to me because I had a two-handed weapon, and I couldn't. If I did any like the light attacks, it would do nothing to him. So I would just do heavy attacks constantly. That's what the guy told me to do too. So I just went all heavy, and I would like his combo was really easy to pick up what he was going to do. Like this was simple, which is fine. I mean, that part was fine. Just it was just too long.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you lose that last QTE, you got to do that whole wheel part, I'm assuming, over again.
That's what I would figure. Yeah. And I'm glad I pulled it off in the first try. Because if I'd had to do that last segment again, I would have been like, you know what? I'm just going to look up the ending on YouTube.
I can't do that usually because then I can't put it on my list. I keep a list of all the games I beat in general. So I don't. But, oh, God, when I saw that, like I remember just being like, I'm going to stare at the TV. And I'm going to hold this controller. I'm going to pay attention to every little button that pops up. And I'm not going to miss one. In this game, when it would have you tap buttons, I would tap it just until the button goes away. As soon as the button went away, I let go so I don't fuck up the next QTE that's coming.
Yeah.
Because this game taught me that. Like, yeah, you can mess yourself up. And I remember when the credits showed, I was like, yes, it's done. One of my worst boss fights in a game in a while.
Easily. Yeah, same.
And I'm with you. I love boss fights in games. I think, that's one reason I love the Dark Souls Bloodborne series so much, because I love good boss fights. I think that it's just great to talk about for what we do, you know, the show when I talk about boss fights. It's just, I just enjoy it in games in general.
Yeah. And like, I do think that was, you know, we talked a lot about like, you know, what we liked about the 360 generation. I think that was actually a failing of the 360 generation, is where I think that's where the art of the boss fight started to like go away. I mean, there's exceptions, right? Like, I still think about like the Mr. Freeze boss fight in Batman Arkham Knight or Arkham City as like a all-time great one.
Oh yeah.
But then I think about like, you know, the end of BioShock 1 where they're like, I don't know, I guess we need a boss in this thing, and or Mass Effect 2, right? The end boss of Mass Effect 2, like, you know, sometimes like I think this generation was where like people started to like. Well, and I think also because the game started to get more realistic, right? So, like, I remember playing Grand Theft Auto 4, and there would be, like, boss fights in there, and I'm putting those in, like, sneer quotes, because they would just be, like, dudes with, like, crazy amount of health, and it's like, why am I doing this?
I
Like,
should really play that one day.
it's I have very fond memories of Grand Theft Auto 4, but at the same time, I'm not sure if I can go back, especially now that I've played Saints Row 3 and 4, which are my preferred level of open world crime bullshit.
Yeah, I've tried playing Grand Theft Auto 4 before, but I've never gotten anywhere.
Yeah, it's long too.
It's on my list.
Really
I beat
long.
5. I beat Grand Theft Auto 5 actually at one point, but
That's impressive. I Grand Theft Auto 5 bored me to tears, and I think I bounced out like after the second heist.
when I start a game, I usually finish almost every game I start. I have a compulsion with that unless something like breaks, like Blood Omen 2, where it crashed in the final boss and wouldn't load. I said, fuck it. Soul Reaver 2, where I could not get the game to load. I mean, those are the few cases where I'm like, okay, I give up game. I will just, experience you through YouTube then, because I have no choice. But if I can, except for Beautiful Joe, where the skill cap said no. So
right.
And I said, okay, we're done.
Now for me, like I've definitely like adopted if I'm not having fun with this anymore, like I'm done. Right. So, and I've got too much to play where it's like, I've got other stuff. I can move on to something that I'm going to have more fun with. So this is where you and I part ways, game. And I'm fine.
No, that's fair. There's nothing wrong with that style of play. I like to beat everything I do for the show, and almost everything I play is for the show. But even before that, even before the podcast, I would usually start a game and I would do my best to finish it. But I also play a lot of retro games with save states, so it's much easier to finish them.
You're right.
When you're cheating. Yeah. Anything else to say about this game before we go on to questions, comments, or memories?
The last thing I just wanted to highlight real quick, and I know it's not the podcast to do it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Really, really solid soundtrack. I really dug a lot of the music in this game. I thought it was very appropriate. And like there would be times when like during fights it would like swell to a part where I was like, yeah, man, like this is really doing it for me. Like I'm really digging this. I feel like I'm Conan right now. So and I saw I think the composer worked on Darksiders as well. So
that's a good game.
Yeah, like real good stuff. Thought it did the job really well.
Right, and I watched our entire Orblood Super replay from Rob St. John. Extremely underrated game. Ron Perlman's voice was perfect. I also enjoyed the gore and titties. Take me and crush me with your love.
I agree with all of that except for Ron Perlman, but
from Andrew Burns. I just remember seeing this cover blown up as a full-page ad in Game Homer for what felt like at least a year. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like
I remember.
This was after I was going to E3, but I can just imagine the THQ booth at E3, like probably the year before this game came out, and just that booth being like lousy with Conan stuff and them really pushing it pretty hard. I can definitely see that happening. Oh,
supposedly I think there's a Conan game actually in the works. Conan Unconquered. No, that came out in 2019. I don't know what that is. Oh, RTS.
Okay. That's a choice.
Yeah. Because I searched Conan Game Informer, and that's the only thing that really came up. I want to find out if there was something for this game a long time ago, but
yeah,
my guess is not. Or at least I'm not going to find it without a lot of work that I don't want to give. All right, and then from Dominic Chikoki, friend of the show, would it be fair to say if you like a God of War clone like this, there's a chance you like Bujingi, the Forsaken City? Which is a game he's been trying to pitch to me to do on the show, which I did put on the show, hopefully, for next year.
I haven't played that one, but I'm down with a character action game. I'm down for a B game. So I'm sure I'd probably get some enjoyment out of it.
Okay. I'll hit you up then. It's in whenever the hell I do it. It's going to be September or something like that. It's a while now for now, but
yeah.
Hey, a game that will never get re-released either because of licensing.
Right. Yeah.
There's some.
Well, I got to say though, because I believe that I didn't check actually. I think that I still have the disc on PlayStation 3, but I don't have my PlayStation 3 hooked up right now. But it is backwards compatible on the Xbox, and I actually bought it digitally on the Xbox store, and so that's how I played it.
Okay, so I didn't know it was still available.
It's still available, yeah. So that was nice to see. Because otherwise, I was just going to order a used copy for Xbox and just run it off the disc. But because I knew it was backwards compatible, but the nice thing about the games that they have made backwards compatible on the Xbox platform is that they're also available to buy digitally. So even some of the licensed stuff, I think they're pretty much done with the backwards compatible. Oh no, but Now that they own Activision Blizzard, I'm hoping that maybe some work gets done for the two Transformers games from High Moon. Oh, those are fucking fantastic.
Those need to come back for people.
Yes.
Those are cool games. I played one of them a little bit. I never finished either one, unfortunately. But yeah, those look cool. I've been meaning to play those for years.
They're great.
I'm hoping with that acquisition that they do bring stuff back.
Me too.
But no, that's awesome. You can buy this game. I thought you would have to for sure have to buy it used to play it.
I was thinking that too, but no, I just bought it right off the store. It was $20, which is, a little bit pricey for a game this old, but sometimes you pay for convenience, and it was certainly very convenient to do that.
Oh yeah, no, I get that. I mean, I thankfully paid $4 for this game in the version I played, but yeah, I've had it for probably over 5 years in my PS3 collection. So just finally got around to it.
Yeah.
And probably had it since 2009 or 10 when I first got my 360. So I'm assuming I had this game forever.
Yeah.
Right. And then from the Giant Bomb Group from John Kemery, I remember playing it when it first came out. I fell off it for a few months and went back to finish it. Fun game. Nice to see a half decent Conan game.
Yeah.
All right. And that's all I have. So, I didn't expect I was going to get much. I just always have to ask people and see what happens.
Yeah, you never know, right? Like, for all we know, there was this really hardcore character action community that had formed around this Conan game because again, the combat system is actually pretty deep.
I mean, I actually, speaking of God of War ripoffs, I played The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge last 2 weeks ago for the show.
I didn't know that was an action game.
Yep, it's a Devil May Cry more Devil May Cry clone made by the people that made Devil May Cry.
Oh, that's weird. That's weird.
It's a sequel to the movie too.
Huh.
It's a legit sequel to what happens after the first movie or only movie.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that one. I didn't listen to it because I was like, well, I don't care anything about Nightmare Before Christmas, anything. But now I'm intrigued.
Oh, it's not a good game, by the way. We were not. None of us were happy. Let's just say that. This was an experience where I walked away. This is a fun game. I did not walk away from Oogie's Revenge going, this is a fun game.
Yeah, because those two things don't really match up. Just like you shouldn't turn Conan into an RTS. Certain things work better with other genres.
I would enjoy another Conan action game for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, if they were making one, I would pick it up at some point for dirt cheap and play it someday maybe. But a strategy game, I have absolutely no interest. I mean, I like RTSs, but I'm not going to play an RTS.
Yeah.
So it makes me sad that that's all we get for Conan. I'm also sad this game never came out on PC because I would have rather bought it on PC.
Yeah.
And I don't like MMOs, so there's that too. Well, the survival game is on Steam, but I don't want to play a survival game.
I'm waiting for a survival game to hook me with story. The closest I've gotten is I really loved Subnautica, but it still has there's still enough where it's just you're kind of aimlessly, surviving and building stuff and not really knowing what to do next. I'm hoping that Ark 2 is the game that does it for me because I like the concept of a survival game, but I'm a big narrative guy, and so I need a strong narrative to keep me caring about surviving. And it seems like Ark 2 might be that, but we'll see. My problem with Ark 1 on console is that is a PC game, and it does not work on console very well as far as interface. And I'm hoping the sequel is made, knowing that they're going to be on console. So maybe that'll be a smoother interface, but gotta wait and see.
Oh, that survival game is also a open world multiplayer game.
Yeah, that's how Ark is. I think it very much. I think Ark came out first. I want to say this took a lot of cues from Ark. I could be wrong about that.
Ark definitely came out first.
Okay.
Because I can tell you where I was when Ark came out, and that was not 2018 yet. So.
I gotcha.
Because I was working at the Mall America, and I remember talking to a guy about Ark because he just gotten it, and that I didn't work there at that time. So
there you go.
That's all I know. The weird things I had a conversation about this title that was before this year, so it did not come out that year.
Oh, dude, I worked in video game retail for so long, and then since then, literally I mark time by console releases, and I think that's the reason why whenever I see anniversaries of stuff, I don't have that oh, I'm so old reaction, because I'm just no, yeah, that makes sense. Because, it's that, so, because right now, for whatever reason, I have moved it up recently. So right now, my current frame of reference is the PS4 launch, which was 2013. So I'm oh yeah, that came out. Yeah, that was right around the time of the PS4 launch. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, that's about 10 years old. That tracks. That's fine. It doesn't bother me, but that's how I mark time, dude. Like I mark it by major video game releases and or console launches.
I mean, it makes perfect sense, especially if that's a big part of your life or your work, what you're doing for work. I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And then with the podcast also, right? Like, I've been doing the podcast since 2012. So there's that as well.
That makes perfect sense too. I mean, I'm kind of the same way. Like I joke and call, like, oh, I did this pre-podcast, or I did this after podcast started.
Right. Yeah.
Because it affects my way of life. And before we go on to Shelf Stacker Box, I want to give away another random Steam code.
Ooh.
Let's see here. Here's the code for Styx Masters of Shadow.
That's a good game.
Never played it, but I own it, and I have codes for it. The code is RP6YV9PVTW3H4YR. That is the code for Styx Master of Shadow on Steam. All right. And let's go to Shelf Stacker Box. And Julian, why don't you go first?
I'm going to stack this one. Because I think it technically is stacked in my collection somewhere. Like I think I still have the PS3 version. I'm not quite sure. It is a solid game. It knows what it is. It doesn't try to really punch above that weight class too much. It is weird going back and looking at this game and being like, oh yeah, like a PS2 game kind of took this game's lunch. But at the same time, like we've said, like there's some really cool stuff in this game. Like it had some really good ideas. If they'd had a little bit more time, I think this could have been something actually kind of special and might have actually made a splash. And, I'm increasingly amazed at like the decisions of corporate assholes in video games where it's like, because they never really, there's never any consequences for their actions. But their decisions will oftentimes be the make or break it for a game's success. But the people who suffer are the ones who actually like did the work. And I bet that's what happened here is like some idiot was like, no, we need to push this out the door now because we need to make it for like fiscal or whatever. And then, they laid off a bunch of people at Nihilistic Games or whatever. But it wasn't their decision to push it out early. Like,
I hate that. It's like, just wait. You'll make more money if you just wait. But it's that whole like, money's not real type thing with some of these companies where it's just like, we just got to keep our stock price up.
Yep.
So like with Netflix, I think it's going to happen someday. So someday it's all going to fall apart. But I will be very sad because I love Netflix. So I enjoy it. But yeah, that's a whole other thing. Okay, and I'm going to put this in the stack too. I had fun. It's not something that I'll ever go back. And I mean, hell, I beat it Friday and I already forgot some of the bosses in the game as I was watching the YouTube. Like, it's a forgettable game, but it was a fun 4-hour experience. It's finally off my backlog after at least a decade, and it felt good. It was fun. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about it. I'm glad I played it.
Yeah, me too.
So, and I'm glad I found someone to actually talk about it and play it with me. So that was nice.
Yeah. Again, I think that's the brilliance of this show is getting to talk about these these games that were large. I mean, you play a lot of like popular big games as well, but like there's I think the more interesting ones are the ones where you're talking about stuff that people may not have even messed with or been aware of, like when it came out.
Oh, and I feel like this is definitely one of those games people are not aware of anymore.
Yes.
Oh, and I just look at my giant 360 library of some of the random shit that just exists there, and I'm just like, well, one that's I know is on Steam also, Blades of Time. Never played that, but I've always wanted to, like X-Blades, like just random, character action game.
Yeah.
Asura's Wrath. I don't think Asura's Wrath is anywhere else but 360.
It's on PS3.
Okay, but it's not. It never got ported.
It never got ported. It is backwards compatible on Xbox though, which is nice. So I think you can still buy it digitally there as well. I love that game. Don't listen to the haters that complain about them locking the real ending behind DLC because that is just them like really leaning into the anime trope. The game ends just fine in the base game, guys. It's just that like anime always has the real ending as like an OAV or a movie after the fact, and you watch and you're like, I didn't need that. It was fine before.
I actually bought that DLC. I bought it and played it way back then. Game. I enjoyed it too. I played it once and I forgot about it, but I was looking at my collection of A's and there it was, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should.
Yeah.
It's too bad. I wanted to play that on PC, but it doesn't exist.
On my short list of Capcom franchises that I desperately want to see come back in some way, shape, or form. It never will happen, but
no.
Goddamn, that character's cool.
I would love to see it on Steam just to be able to buy it and replay it on my Steam Deck or something. That's all I want. But All right, and before we go on to plugs, I do want to mention the game you get to talk about next week. Next week, we're talking about Legend of Zelda: The Breath of the Wild for our 5-year anniversary of this podcast. So you get to hear who knows how long the episode's going to be next week. So go listen to that. And Julian, where can people find you at?
Yeah, well, I've been on Games My Mom Found before. You may know me as the host of Nerds Without Pants, but I'm the host of Nerds Without Pants no longer. Because as of after 11 years, 282 numbered episodes, and 55 specials, Nerds Without Pants has come to a close. But from the ashes of that comes something new that I'm very excited about. Launching in the early part of 2024, we're hoping by February or March. It kind of depends on when we get our excellent theme music done by the wonderful, super talented Megan McDuffie of River City Girls fame. We have launched. We've done a soft launch already. You can actually go find us everywhere on your favorite podcatchers. But we are launching the Stage Select, a video game variety show podcast, hosted by myself and my co-host of Nerds Without Pants, Justin Ham. So the only thing that you can count on with an episode of the Stage Select is that we're going to talk about video games. Beyond that, you have no idea what to expect or who to expect on the show, because it's very much inspired by old variety TV shows like Rowan Martin's Laugh-In from the 60s, or You Can't Do That on Television from the 80s, or the original Muppet Show. We're going to have weird random guests and sketches and dumb characters and fake commercials and all sorts of like weird shit every episode. I'm super excited about it. Justin is a really funny dude that just comes up with like the craziest shit. And, we were stifled with Nerds Without Pants because we technically didn't own it ourselves and actually had, through no fault of our own, like just on the back end, we were delisted from Apple Podcasts. So like you could not find Nerds Without Pants for a good while there unless you had an alternate form of podcatcher. So now having full control of the show and really being able to make a go of it, like we're very excited to move forward with this new show. You can find the show on Twitter at Stage Select Pod. And again, you can find it on all of the major podcatchers now and Spotify as well. Just look for the Stage Select. There's 2 other Stage Select podcasts that are there, but one of them is a Brazilian podcast that's defunct, and another one is a podcast that hasn't updated since 2020. And Stage Select is like a legacy thing from Nerds Without Pants that we felt was like a really good way to pay homage to the old thing while moving on to the new thing. So we have a beautiful logo done for us by friend of the show, John Golson, that I'm so happy with. I asked him, I said, okay, look, I want the actual logo to kind of be like a 60s mod style, like Laugh-In, but I want our faces on there, sort of like Street Fighter Alpha 3's character select screen. And he knocked it out of the fucking park. It is so cool. Like, we never did merch for Nerds Without Pants, but I want this on a t-shirt now. Like, it's so neat.
It's not hard to do. Like I almost made shirts for the show at one point, but I just never bothered to. But yeah, it's not hard.
Yeah.
So we'll just throw them on our website and then they'll take a cut. They'll take a majority of it, but yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll see. Like, we're going to be launching a Patreon very soon, even, to kind of help launch the show and stuff like that. So again, the best place to find us is on Twitter, because we have a link tree there that has all of the details. But yeah, please, if that sounds interesting to you whatsoever, please, go check it out. Subscribe to it so that you're ready for when the show launches in early 2024, and come on this crazy, crazy ride with us, because it's going to be a blast.
And you will see a link in the show notes to his show. No matter what time if you listen to this early, you listen to it months from now, it will be there. So go check that out. Great. And if you enjoyed this show, there's over 550 other episodes of this podcast. You can find everything we do on Podbean. Otherwise, get it wherever you get your podcatchers, but only everything is on Podbean. So you can find that on there. If you want to support the show for a little $1, you can vote in our Patreon polls. We have one every month. So you can help this, you get to help define what the show becomes. You'll help affect an episode that happens every month. So definitely go do that. And you help me out. So greatly appreciated. Please join our Discord. You see a link in the show notes to chat with us in Discord. We're always happy to have more people on there. I want to give a shout out to my awesome intro and outro courtesy of Helena and Hell Hastry. You can follow her on TikTok, Instagram, Twitch. You will see a link to her link tree in the show notes. Also want to give a shout out to my buddy Bill Tucker, started his own podcast, A Gamer Looks at 40. Been on many movie episodes of this podcast, so definitely go check him out. And I want to give a shout out to Nomads of Fantasy, another podcast that I work with. And please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and TikTok. Squirrel videos on TikTok. And YouTube, audio only, but we are on all those different things. And I think that's everything I need to say. So we will see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.